I was in Germany around the time of the terrorist attack in Munich, a mass shooting in which 9 people were killed, July 22nd, 2016. 2 days before, there had been an axe attack on a train in Wuersburg, no casualties. 2 days after, there would be a machete attack in Reutlingen, 2 casualties. These events were unusual, both in their nature and in their proximity to one another. They made headline news across the world. You might not remember them, but you almost certainly heard about them at the time. And they came at a time when tensions surrounding the refugee crisis were, and still are at the point of recording, hitting boiling point, not just in Germany. France had suffered a brutal terrorist attack less than 2 weeks earlier in Nice, 86 casualties, and in Paris the previous November, 130 casualties, and in Belgium as well, where an attack on Brussels airport had left 30 dead in March, and in Greece, whose economy was already sinking into the fucking ocean back in 2010, and on whose shores thousands of refugees were now landing every day. Back home, tensions were just as high, if not higher. Now, we hadn't had an attack since the London bombings in 2005, mind you, 52 casualties, but the news was waterboarding us daily with footage of the makeshift camp in Calais containing just under 7,500 refugees seeking sanctuary in the UK. Now, compare that number to the number Germany had taken in, by some estimates, over 1.1 million. And we, like most islanders, I guess, start to look a little hysterical in the face of change and overly concerned with maintaining the sanctity of our personal space. But whether our anxiety was justified or not, our country and the rest of the continent was divided between those who felt that there were lessons that we had to learn from the fallout of the Holocaust and the Second World War, that we had nothing short of a moral fucking duty, an obligation to take in as many refugees as we could realistically afford to care for. And on the other side were those who were worried that having a large group of people entering the country, regardless of their country of origin, would be a strain on our resources and a threat to our culture, with the added twist that these people were coming from a region that we had been for over half a decade bombing the fuck out of, where extremist anti-Western sentiment had been coalescing under the flag of the so-called Islamic State, a group who were now explicitly stating that they were going to be sending sleeper agents into Europe along with the refugees. It was a fucking mess. Nobody knew what was going on. And everybody was watching Germany to see whether it was worth following their lead. There will be blood, said the continent's right wing. And then when the Munich attack happened, we on the left, privately, started to wonder if they were right after all. Nobody had any real information. And so the tabloids and the blogs, increasingly indistinguishable from one another, did what tabloids and blogs do best. Syrian asylum seekers, refugee crisis, Muslim terror attack. The human brain is not designed to be a truth detector. It's designed to respond to stories. The more evocative, the better. There is a gap that was left empty when we outsourced our folk storytelling to Hollywood, and now the tabloid press has stepped in to fill its place. They take the familiar pieces of our day-to-day lives, the shopping centres, the airports, the immigrants, the weird, unfamiliar religions, and they rearrange these pieces in front of our eyes into terrifying constellations until one of the constellations snags against something dark and amorphous in our subconscious, triggering the release of a potent natural speedball into our system. Dopamine, endorphins, adrenaline, keeping us coming back to the same papers and the same websites again and again for more of that feeling, because we enjoy being afraid. And we enjoy being afraid because that payload of dopamine, endorphins, adrenaline is the same bunch of chemicals that are released when we are happy. It's why a lot of us feel amazing after watching a horror movie. It's why a mediocre horror movie is, for many of us, more enjoyable than an Oscar-winning drama. And it's why the horror movie industry is effectively a money-printing machine. And it's the same reason why the Mail Online is the internet's most visited English-language news provider. You don't just enjoy stories about monsters, you go looking for them. And you do this because your brain thinks it's learning from them. It's a particularly ingenious quirk of natural selection. The fact that we can be scared by and alter our behavior in response to abstract fears. This is what has kept us nimble and vigilant and alive for tens of thousands of years. The hunter who narrowly avoids getting eaten by a tiger, who is given a mainline dose of pharmaceutical-grade mortal fucking terror, firing up the learning synapses of their brain like watching the burning of Alexandria in reverse. This hunter is unlikely to make the mistakes that almost got him killed more than once. But how do you pass that knowledge on without throwing your children at tigers and hoping they come home? If the hunter is a decent storyteller, able to induce in others even a fraction of that terror, emulate the conditions, replicate the lessons, the people who hear the hunter's story will be at an evolutionary advantage without ever needing to see a tiger. But we are not hunters anymore, not really. The mail online is not saving anybody from anything. And I was aware of all this. I knew the games the right wing plays. I thought being onto their games meant that I was safe from them, that I could dip in and out of this swamp at will without fear of being infected by it. And I was dipping in and out of it regularly because I was following the most interesting US election cycle in modern fucking history. Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, the great unpopularity contest, a nationwide poll to see who was the least unlikable. Every day I would wake up and it would be the first thing I'd Google, and Donald Trump had made xenophobia the keystone of his entire campaign. To listen to him speak meant throwing your gates wide open and inviting his mimetic Trojan horse into your brain. I did this every day. This is how people go insane. This is how people forget what's real and what's a smear of bird shit on their window pane. On my way home from Germany, I stayed overnight in a hotel in Paris, and I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of screaming, gunshots, commotion. And next to my bed, standing over me, two Middle Eastern men with assault rifles speaking in a language I didn't understand. And I knew instantly, as you do in dreams, that a group of terrorists had taken the hotel and were going room to room executing the Western infidels. I knew. And then I woke up and I took a deep breath. I opened my eyes and my bedroom was empty. This was the exact moment I realized that the monster stories I'd been laughing at for years had slipped through the bars of their cage, burrowed through my eyes and ears, and had hatched while I was sleeping. They weren't just on the news and in the papers anymore. They were in my fucking head, emulating the conditions, replicating the lessons. This is how I learned that I am not above being a scared little white man. I am not too smart to fall for all the rhetoric and bile. I am not immune to the disease the right wing is deliberately trying to spread. These stories do not deserve our respect, but that doesn't mean we can be careless around them. And for the rest of my life, whenever I see a brown person wearing a puffy jacket or a rucksack or carrying a sports bag, my heart rate will increase and my pupils will dilate and my brain will secrete dopamine, endorphins and adrenaline into my bloodstream. And sometimes I will forget that this is happening because I'm weak. Sometimes, hopefully not too regularly, I will make the stupidest mistake it's possible to make. I will assume that my fear of something is evidence that that something is worth being afraid of. You know, the killer behind the Munich terror attack was 18-year-old David Sonboli, a secular German-born citizen who was targeting Turks and Arabs because it was Turkish and Arab children who had been bullying him. He idolized Anders Breivik, a Norwegian terrorist who killed, among others, 55 children who he believed were part of a global left-wing conspiracy. David Sonboli supported Germany's far-right political party, and he considered himself a proud member of the Aryan race. I try to remember this when I have the fucking narcissism to feel unsafe in this country.